This video was brought to you by Nebula. Today, the UN votes on the status of Palestine, protests in Armenia demand the Prime Minister's resignation, and the UK exits recession with surprise economic growth. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Friday the 10th of May 2024. The United Nations General Assembly will vote today on a resolution that would recognise Palestine as qualified for UN membership, grant it new rights and privileges, and send its membership application back to the UN Security Council to reconsider the matter favourably. Now, this represents a revival of the Palestinian bid to gain full UN membership, after the United States vetoed a widely supported resolution at the Security Council that would have granted membership to the state of Palestine, which has been seen as a non-member observer state since 2012. This new draft resolution, which is expected to be voted on today, will almost certainly be approved by the 193-member UN General Assembly, as more than 140 member states already recognize the state of Palestine. And crucially, the General Assembly, unlike the Security Council, does not have any vetoes. Now, this vote will also gauge international support for Palestinian statehood, and will likely highlight the isolation of the US and Israeli position. However, to actually become a full member of the United Nations, the applicant state needs the approval of the Security Council, where the US does wield a veto. As such, this draft resolution determines that Palestine is qualified for membership and therefore recommends that the Security Council reconsider its request favourably, but doesn't make any guarantees. However, if successful, the resolution would grant Palestine some additional rights and privileges at the UN. Now, this draft has gone through a number of resolutions. For example, China and Russia, which both support Palestinian membership, pushed for changes that make clear that the additional UN rights for Palestine would be on an exceptional basis without setting a precedent, as a way of avoiding a precedent for other potential members like Kosovo and Taiwan. Even if the resolution does pass as expected, though, the UN Security Council is unlikely to reconsider Palestine's application favourably, as the resolution urges. That's because the US, which officially supports a two-state solution, still opposes the push for membership, and is against the General Assembly resolution. The American ambassador to the UN said, "We have said from the beginning that the best way to ensure Palestinian full membership in the UN is to do that through negotiations with Israel. That remains our position." In fact, there is a long-standing law in the US that prohibits the US from funding international organizations, including the UN, that grant full membership to Palestine. This is exactly what happened back in 2011, when the US cut funding to UNESCO after the body granted full Palestinian membership. The Palestinian UN envoy, however, has urged members to support its application, saying that it would be a step towards a two-state solution and would be a clear affirmation of support at this very critical moment for the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, including the right to their independent state. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell to get more daily briefing on Monday. Plus, if you want to support the channel, like Ian Date, then consider joining the new TLDR membership program for just $1.99. Yesterday, tens of thousands of protesters rallied in the Armenian capital of Yerevan, demanding the resignation of their Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan over his ceasefire peace plans with Azerbaijan. After seeking to normalize ties following decades of conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region, Pashinyan announced earlier this week that he intended to return 4 border villages occupied by Armenia to Azerbaijan. Now, this move was met with protests from the village residents and opposition activists. Residents marched to Yerevan on foot last week, where they were awaited by the Archbishop yesterday, who led them into the capital where hundreds were already waiting for them. At the protests, the Archbishop initially claimed that the protesters were only demanding the border demarcation process to end, but then proceeded to give Pashinyan an hour to resign, later extended by 15 minutes. But no response was received both times. The Archbishop then urged the Parliament to start the process of removing Pashinyan, threatening peaceful civil disobedience if they didn't act. Amidst the political turmoil, earlier in the day, Russia border guards began to withdraw from their posts along Armenia's frontiers with Azerbaijan. In recent years, relations between Russia and Armenia have weakened, as Armenia, under Pashinyan's leadership, has looked to strengthen its ties with the West. Now, the opposition wasn't too happy about this Western pivot, arguing that Moscow is Armenia's longest and closest ally, and that they should stay close with Russia. With Russian peacekeepers now officially leaving Armenia, it seems that Armenia will continue its Western path, unless the protesters can oust Pashinyan and his government. And we'll keep you updated as to how these protests progress. Next up, the UK economy came out of recession in the first quarter of 2024, growing by 0.6%, according to new GDP numbers released today by the Office for National Statistics. Now, this is the fastest UK growth since 2021, beating forecasts by the Bank of England and Reuters, and was the strongest growth of any G7 country. Now, this is undoubtedly a bit of a relief for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who made economic growth one of his 5 key pledges to the British public last year, and whose Conservative Party is currently trailing 20% in the polls. UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said that the data is proof that the economy is returning to full health for the first time since the pandemic, with economists saying that it's being driven by a 0.7% increase in services output and 1.4% increase in manufacturing output. The Bank of England said further growth is expected over the next 3 years, and has signalled that it will cut interest rates this summer if inflation stays low. However, while the new figures do offer some optimism, the UK economy is still fairly weak and remains below its pre-COVID trends, and has seen far slower growth than both the US and Eurozone in the same period. Next, major flooding in Brazil has left more than 100 people dead and displaced more than 165,000 people, as rescue efforts continue in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. And with more rain forecast in the coming days, there are fears that water levels could rise yet further. The state's governor said that the effect of floods and the extent of the tragedy are devastating, and added that initial calculations have worked out that the state will need $3.68 billion to rebuild after the disaster. Among the many images and videos of flooded streets, damaged infrastructure, and submerged houses, one caught the public's attention more than any other, and that was of a horse named Carmelo, who was stuck for days on the roof of a submerged building. Fortunately, a rescue effort broadcast on television was successful, as rescuers climbed onto the roof, sedated the horse, and transferred it into an inflatable raft to be taken to safety. And finally, we bring you some more uplifting news that a toddler in the UK has had her hearing restored thanks to a groundbreaking gene therapy treatment. Opal Sandy was born deaf due to a condition called auditory neuropathy, but underwent a 16-minute pioneering surgery that involves giving the patient an infusion containing a working copy of the faulty gene. 6 months on, Opal can now hear unaided, leaving her parents gobsmacked. The chief investigator of the trial said that we have results from Opal that are very spectacular, so close to normal hearing restoration. So we do hope that it could be a potential cure. The best way to stay on top of the news is with Nebula News. If you haven't heard, we've just launched a project alongside our partners at Nebula called Nebula News, where every day the TLDR team curates a selection of videos that matter the most in the world right now. As you surely already know, Nebula is the thoughtful streaming service that's pushing boundaries on what independent creators can do with their content, including Nebula News, where we handpick a feed of content that should help you keep up to date with everything you need to sound smart and be truly informed. We believe that in a confusing and overwhelming news environment, knowing what to pay attention to is important. You can't track every story, so our curation should help to surface what really matters, showing you videos from TLDR and other superb creators that will help you understand the world around you quickly and easily. It's not just the curated news content brought to you directly by us. Nebula also features loads of exclusive original content. That's things like Real Life Law's brand new series War Room, which every month runs you through a whole load of ongoing conflicts to keep you in the loop. You can also watch every TLDR video on Nebula ad-free, and in many instances, before they land on YouTube. Now, if you're already subscribed to Nebula, then you can find the brand new Nebula News section at nebula.tv/news. And make sure to bookmark or save that link so that you can use it as your TLDR-ified news homepage. If you're not a member already, you can click the link in the description to sign up now. If you do, you'll get 40% off an annual plan by using our link. That's less than £2 a month. Plus, Nebula will know that you came from us, which really helps us out. Now, we've got some really great feedback from existing members, so I hope you enjoy all the effort we're going to with Nebula News.